What is the dumbest idea you have ever had that actually worked? So it was my mom's birthday, we're barbecuing and we got her to stay inside and prep food so we can decorate the front with balloons and streamers and what have you. Well, we got the whole thing done in secret as hoped, but then we realized there was no way we could get all the leftover decoration material and balloon pump inside without her noticing. Now there are two ways into our house. The back door that leads into the garage and then into the kitchen where mom was, and the front door which is visible from the kitchen sink. So, I told my brother I would go in from the back door and distract her while he brought the stuff in through the front, and down the hall past the kitchen. Once I got in the kitchen it had occurred to me that I had no plan of attack, so I legit just said, "Hey mom, look at this dance I made," and started like swaying and bopping up and down and doing jazz hands and going la 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 la. Mind you, I am like 17 years old in this scenario. So she's just watching me, and when bro comes in and is sneaking through the hole behind her with all the stuff, I keep telling her wait, it's about to get good, and she kept watching in confusion. The second he was in the clear, I stopped and said okay that's it, and that was that. We succeeded. I don't know why but I'm crying laughing at this. In my freshman year of college, my grades were really not great, and my parents were really strict about getting good grades. When my dad asked to see my grades, I panicked and did the inspect command on the computer where you can change typefaces on the screen to read different words and letters. I changed all of my crappy grades to good grades. My dad was so happy that I did good my first year of school. He asked me to print my results. I did, and turns out he had to send them to our car insurance company for a good student discount. Ultimately, I committed insurance fraud by accident, but I got the discount. Life hack: commit insurance fraud. When I was like 7 years old, I was playing in my back garden with those incredibly bouncy little balls you got, just bouncing them high off the house and letting them bounce randomly before trying to catch them, as you did. One time I went for this huge throw off the wall and it bounced crazily off various surfaces so fast I completely lost track of it. So my 7-year-old logic was to stand back in the same place and throw another ball the same way. I watched it bounce this way and that about 10 times before finally hitting a plant and coming to a rest in a flower bed. I went over to pull back the foliage and sure enough there were both balls literally lying touching each other in the mud. At the time I was like, yep, makes sense. But over the years since then I've often thought about it and how the heck it worked. I used to do the same thing. As I threw the second ball I would say, "Brother, go find your brother." Worked way more often than it should have. Wearing a motorcycle helmet while snowblowing. I did it because I missed riding. It kept my face warm and when snow would fly back at me the visor would protect me. OMG, this has to be the stupidest looking activity, but so effective. Snowblower XTREME. When I was younger I got called into HR because I drew a very detailed picture of a dong. It was really good. The HR meeting happened like a week after I drew it and my only defense was, "I don't recall doing that. Do you happen to have the picture? It might jog my memory." They didn't have it, of course, because I had it. And because I didn't confess they couldn't do crap. Investigation results inconclusive. Have a nice day. But do you still have it? A storm broke a limb on a tree hanging over my house in my backyard, but it was still hanging on by a few splinters. I didn't want it to fall, and it wasn't in a place where I could use my ladder to get to it. So I found some rope, tied a brick to it, threw the brick and rope over the limb, made a crude rope swing, and swung and pulled at the branch until it finished breaking. It wasn't until I was using the chainsaw to cut it up that I realized how many times during my stupid idea I could have easily hurt or even killed myself. It's funny when the part of the plan that involves a chainsaw ends up being the least dangerous. Our power was out due to a storm. I had a camp stove to use for boiling water to make a coffee pour through, but I couldn't use my electric grinder for the coffee beans. I tried fashioning a mortar and pestle but it was taking too long. So, I put the coffee beans in a couple of Ziploc bags, placed the bag right behind a car tire, then ran over it back and forth a couple of times to crush the beans. Worked like a charm. I tried fashioning a mortal. Calm down there, Prometheus. A friend and I once snuck 15 people into a warp tour by giving them some bracelets from a party supply store and clipboards full of paper. Walked up to the side gate and said we were with Rock the Vote. The security guard waved us right in. I don't know why, but this one made me laugh the most. It's stupid, and it takes guts. Guts is enough. I forgot to bring a resume to a job interview, but I had an index card in my bag. I cut the index card in half and wrote my name, my contact info, and creative problem solver in my best handwriting, and gave a copy of my business card to both the interviewers. I got the job. When I was young and broke, I bought a sofa from a used furniture store. I had no way to take the sofa home. I went to a used car lot a couple of blocks away and took a truck for a test drive. I bought some furniture at IKEA and didn't have a good way to get it home, so called a fancy Uber and had a bemused driver take me and my stuff home. He even offered to help load and unload everything. Not my idea but my mom's. I dropped one of my earrings and couldn't find it, so she threw my other earring on the floor and it happened to land next to the first one. Brother, go find your brother. Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I'm stuck on a cliff, but if I jump at a really sharp angle at that gravel field, I could just slide down there and be fine. Just like in TV. Every time I think about this, I am amazed I'm not either flattened by a rock or impact against something. Childhood really is just the tutorial level sometimes. Childhood is just a game in attempting death in any way possible. In college I was taking a class that required me to purchase an online textbook and workbook that was registered under your name, basically ensuring that each student would have to buy a new online copy each semester instead of buying used textbooks. I had a friend who took this class a semester before me, so we came up with the idea to message customer service and explain that I had recently gotten married, so my last name had changed, and I legally changed my first name from my friend's first name to my first name, and I would need them to change it in their system. It totally worked and the rep even congratulated me on my marriage. I think it's nearly criminal to enforce students to buy new books instead of used ones, especially when it's the professor's own textbook. Real estate told me I had to have the carpets professionally cleaned. Wasn't in the contract, or I'd lose my $800 bond. I did some research and found out I could become an accredited carpet cleaner as there are no official licensing boards in my state. So, I did what any sane person would do. I paid the $85, did the online course and got my certificate, registered a business name, ABN etc, etc. All free, handed the property management a copy of my accreditation and an invoice for services. I became a professional carpet cleaner and launched a vacate cleaning business that is still going 6 months later. I did clean the carpets. They claimed I didn't and required a professional cleaner's invoice as proof, so I gave them the proof. I did not charge the real estate agency. It was a copy of the invoice they claimed to require. I do professional housekeeping and cleaning for vacating a property at the end of lease tenure. You get maximum bond back. I help people who are being unfairly treated by their property management and advise them on what steps to take in regards to cleaning, repairs etc. With the return of the bond and some smart shopping, I was able to purchase my own equipment to continue the job. I then claimed those costs back on tax. I wrote this and fell asleep, so waking up to a bunch of silvers and a gold is pretty dang cool. Capital C. Thank you Reddit and your love for spite. This is a great story for our malicious compliance. This idea could have easily gotten me fired if it went wrong. I was working as art director at an animation studio, making videos for clients. One client was especially pesky about the use of yellow in the background. They wanted it to be that of their logo, which was this horrible neon pea yellow. We advised against it, but after numerous calls we had to cave and gave a version with that color. They hated it and asked for a change. What followed were 12 versions with numerous calls in between, tweaking the color over and over. Eventually I got tired of it and just sent the original version again. I didn't even bother to rename the file. The client said this looks exactly the way I wanted. Thank you. How that ever went right I still have no idea. Bet my husband I could fix the dent in the car with a plunger. It worked. It is clear I should have used a massive suction corn cob instead. Till I got rear-ended one time, right around Christmas, and had a dent in my back bumper. That summer I had enough spare money to go get it fixed, but when I looked at the bumper there was no dent. As the weather got hotter, it caused the bumper to expand and eventually it popped back into place. I used to know a guy who, every week, would order his Saturday night curry for delivery while sitting in the pub and then walk over the road to the curry house and get it and himself delivered home. This went on for about 10-12 weeks. One week, we were sitting having a pint and the owner of the curry house walked in, took his order, and had him picked up from the pub. He said it was easier for everyone concerned. That's the most British thing I've ever read. I once faked being sick when I was in middle school and told my mom I had a sore throat and felt a cold coming on. She took me to the doctor and it turned out that I did, in fact, have strep throat lol. Task failed successfully. Dressing like a redneck to pick up chicks. Went to college in the south but the guys there were all very preppy. I thought because a lot of the girls grew up in the south, they would be drawn to more of a redneck vibe that not many people on campus had. So I bought a camo fishing hat. Literally had 3 girls start conversations with me that day. Nice. Bobcat tire blew during a job. Had another tire, but no jack. Positioned the Bobcat behind a dump truck. Bobcat then tries to lift the butt end of the dump truck. Dump truck hella heavy, Bobcat lifted itself instead. Tire changed and back to work. That sounds like a good way to end up crushed by a skid steer. There was a swarm of hornets that had made a nest under the front of our porch with only one specific narrow entry in or out. Spray wouldn't work and it was right under our front door, so had no way to keep exterminating them. Then I realized why not wearing blades of metal. We did have an old 50s metal fan and I could maybe blow them away from the entrance so they had no way to get in. The unanticipated effect was that it worked, though after a few hours had created a Civil War battlefield of dead or dying hornets piling up like a zombie tower in World War Z. Every few moments you'd hear thunk as another hornet fell into the trap. So satisfying. We had a noisy rotating rooster weather vane, loud enough to keep people awake on windy nights, despite having been lubed. So I filled the hole the rooster rotates in with Crisco, even though people said it was a dumb idea and wouldn't work. Never had to lube it again because the Crisco didn't break down like other lubes. I have a similar story. Kitchen shears rusted at the joint between the 2 blades to the point where it took significant pressure just to move them at all. Googled solutions that seemed tedious and required buying food grade cleaners and lubrication which didn't seem worth it for cheap kitchen shears. So I just dropped some olive oil in there and they've been fine since. Far from the dumbest working idea in the thread, but I once got an extra day to work on a video project in high school by coming to class with a video that was just a quarter second of blackness, eagerly volunteering to go first, then acting confused and scared when the file didn't work. The teacher took pity on me and told me to just bring it the following day, and I got to finish it that evening and still got full credit as if I did it on time. Was really desperate to leave past employer after 15 years. Had been applying and interviewing and striking out. Finally got an interview at a place where, at the time, I felt, meh, I am not really sure this is right for me, but anything is better than where I am at. Instead of prepping for the interview, rehearsing answers, etc., I pulled an Office Space. I was cocky, brash, unconcerned, made it seem like I was happy where I was at and didn't really care if I got the job or not. They called me back the next week and I waited a week to return their call. Same deal with the second interview. When they offered me the job, I hemmed and hawed, said I needed to think about it really hard, and that it was a big move for me, etc., etc. I came back and demanded well over $15,000 above what they were offering in salary. They accepted. There's actually quite a bit of research out there suggesting that people who project confidence are the ones most likely to get hired or promoted, no matter how skilled or knowledgeable they actually are. So this doesn't surprise me at all. Using a sewing needle to remove a bit of dirt that was making one of my records skip. Bear in mind my hands are shaky as heck, so it was certainly very tense and there was a danger of fricking up the whole thing. Thanks to everyone who gave advice on how to clean records less dangerously. I hated my math teacher and she was making us do a project on patterns even though we were in 7th grade. So my pattern was a series of increasingly longer sideways dongs. She didn't even notice and I got an A. Surprised you didn't get the D. My parents used to run a bed and breakfast, and we used to keep a section of the house locked. only light security, was just supposed to stop guests accidentally going into our living space. We used to keep the key on top of a door frame. Turns out the frame was hollow and there was a hole on the top. I put the key up there. It fell into the hole but didn't sound like it dropped all the way to the floor. 14-year-old me didn't realize taking the door frame off isn't a major job, so I was a bit worried my parents would kill me. Found myself a wire coat hanger, straightened it out and attached a magnet to the end to go key fishing. It was more out of desperation than anything else but it somehow worked. Lucky, because keys are usually made of non-ferrous metal. Got a really long drill bit stuck in a piece of thick wood, butcher's block. I tried everything I could think of to yank it out. My solution that ended up working for me was attaching the drill bit to a chain. Put the chain on my truck and have a piece of wood kind of stuck between two branches of a tree. I drove off slowly and it popped right out. To the men wondering on how I hooked up the bit to the chain, the drill bit was a long spade drill bit. The end sticking out of the block was long enough that I could bend into a little hook, attach the chain to the hook, bent the hook in a little further, and tada, it was now another link in the chain. In university I was late on an assignment that was supposed to be in my TA's Dropbox by noon that day. I didn't manage to get there until almost 3 so I was sure he had already emptied it. Now, the drop boxes were literal boxes in cubbies with a slot on the front and a lock on them that prevented them from being pulled out. The rack holding them was just a basic metal frame with about 5 rows of boxes. My TA's box was somewhere in the middle of the shelf. So I figured, I'm late anyways, why not take a chance and slipped my assignment into the box below my TA's box. I got my assignment handed back a few weeks later than everyone else and it had a note from another TA scribbled on it that said looks like this fell into my box by mistake. I got full marks on the assignment. That's genius. One time I sent a letter to a local address by putting the return address as the address I wanted it to go to, not putting postage, and dropping it off in a public mailbox. Went to them returned to sender due to insufficient postage. A friend of mine in junior high used to do this all the time to send me random letters. Instead of using his own name, he always gave funny names on the return address. To this day I still remember the name Skippy Weiner. I am a poor student living in Germany. Students are required by law to have health insurance. The university will expel you if you don't have health insurance. The lowest rate I could get was about €189, $208 a month. I usually don't even spend that much on food. There was just no way that I could pay such a high rate. I wrote my insurer countless letters and emails explaining how there was no way that I could pay €189. They refused to lower my rate, explaining how they are just following the law. They even informed my university that I had failed to pay health insurance. The university then threatened me to exmatriculate me. In my desperation, I wrote the German Ministry of Health. I explained myself and asked them to talk to my insurer. A week later I received a letter from my insurer informing me that they had cut my rate to a mere €89 a month and that this reduction was applicable to all month prior. My rate is about to go up again but this time I should be able to manage. I got my high school degree by attending evening seminars when I was in my mid-20s. I worked a number of years after I received my high school degree. I started university when I turned 30. Therefore, I am not eligible for student rates or government loans. BAföG. Most students in Germany pay a significantly lower rate. Whoa, you got insanely lucky. Good job reaching out to someone so high up. It probably wouldn't work in this day and age but back when I was young I was tired of retail and wanted an office job. I just lied my butt off and pulled a total George Costanza what with friends coached to answer their phones as a business and such. Got hired as an admin assistant and been steadily moving up since. I think about doing this all the time to start a new path. Just scared I will not be able to BS my way in the door. When I was brand new to the army, we were training with another unit and we had to defend the urban combat area, Mount Site, from an incoming force. We were only allowed a few hours to prepare. One guy suggested that we set up tripwires to, at least, slow them down. The doors are all painted bright blue, and all anyone had was my package of black 550 cord, parachute cord, that could easily be seen. Setting this up we thought there was no way they would miss it. I was wrong. Instead of checking the door, like they were supposed to, the opposing force simply tried to rush through. I almost couldn't return fire due to the fact I was laughing so hard. I even put a piece, just below knee level, in the doorway to the room I was in. I turned around when I heard people falling over each other. I looked and almost the entire squad was crawling on top of each other trying to get up. I put my weapon on burst and emptied the magazine. Then fumbled with my last one as I started to laugh even harder than before. After I blindly fired down the hallway, I just leaned against the wall and the entire group and myself just looked at the scene and started laughing. Then their platoon leader came running in and tripped over the same cord. At this point I was done. Put my weapon on safe, put it against the wall, and tried not to pee my pants over the whole situation. LOL, that's awesome. Wish we had something like this in the Air Force. We had to protect our deployment free on board overnight, which was just taking turns not getting sleep and sitting outside the tents and entrances to the camp. The instructors never even tested getting in. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.